a new video, and today we're going to be talking about Lauren Smithfields. Her body was found dead on December 12th, 2021, and we still don't know exactly what happened. So let's jump into the case. Lauren Smithfields was a 23-year-old black female that lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut. She went to Norwalk Community College and was studying to become a physical therapist. Lauren was very popular on social media. Most of her posts consist of beauty and traveling, and as I mentioned before, she did have her own apartment and she was living alone. So let's go all the way back to December 13th. On December 13th, Lauren's mother had texted her saying, "Are you okay? Please let me know." And Lauren didn't respond. And this was very unusual for Lauren because she was very close with her family and she would always respond right away if it did concern her family. So her mother not getting a text from her all day was very strange and very weird. So her mother and her brother went to her apartment and they saw a strange note on Lauren's door. So Lauren's mother and brother went back to the car and they called the number. The number was to Lauren's landlord, and the landlord had told them that Lauren was dead. As her mother was hearing this news, she was choking back tears, trying to hold it together and trying to figure out what was going on. Lauren's mother said on the inside she was panicking. She couldn't believe the news that she was just told. She said, I quote, "All I could do was just stand there, like if I was frozen. I could not believe what he was telling me, that my baby was gone." As you can imagine, Lauren's mother was very upset. She was so upset that this is how she's finding out that her daughter was dead. There was no phone call. There was just a note on Lauren's door. Lauren's mom said it was hard for her to actually process the information because there was no crime scene tape at the apartment. There was no signs of a crime scene, I guess you can say. There was nothing going on. So she was like, this can't be true. How am I going to process all this? I don't believe it. I didn't even get a phone call. I'm just showing up here and there's a note on her door.
See, when I first went there that night around 9 o'clock, when I seen a note on the door saying, if you're looking for Lauren, call this number. So I called the number, no one answered. And then when we went there, there was no taped off or anything. The person was allowed to leave. The police never got into contact with us. We had to keep calling the police officer and he never ever responded to us. It's like when he said he's gonna come over, he never showed up. He had the family waiting for first an hour, then later on 5 hours.
Lauren was on a Bumble date with an older guy and that he was with her in her apartment that night, but not to worry because the guy was a really nice guy. And then the detective hung up abruptly. That's all the information the detective provided during that phone call. He just hung up and was like, oh well, sorry, she's dead, and didn't give them any more information. The brother was stunned, like, how are you gonna tell me this and just hang up? I didn't get a chance to ask any questions. What happened? Who is he? What's going on? Nothing. He didn't have a chance to ask anything. The detective just hung up on them.
They didn't let us know anything. It's like crazy. And I'm asking what's going on. He said she met some guy on Bumble, and I'm asking about the guy. He was like, oh, he sounds like a really nice guy. He sounds like a really good guy. And he was like, I'll call you back, and just hung up in my face.
Lauren's family had called back the detective and asked him to meet them at Lauren's apartment, and he agreed. Lauren's family had waited hours for him to come and he never showed up, so they just kept calling him repeatedly, and finally, after an hour of calling all those times, he answered the phone and he said, "Stop calling me," and hung up the phone. After getting this type of treatment, the family just gave up on him and just went inside the apartment themselves. When they went inside, they saw a used condom, a sedative pill, and bloody sheets.
They provided evidence they'd collected to crime scene investigators who arrived for the first time that day, included a bloody sheet and a pill.
And 2 cups of like drinks or whatever next to a bottle. They didn't take none of that. We seen a condom, we seen lube.
A little while after this, the family's lawyer had made a statement saying that the family had to beg the police department to collect the evidence to make this a crime scene and investigate Lauren's death. Because they weren't getting a response from the police department, the family decided to investigate Lauren's death on their own and to preserve the evidence and make this a crime scene. Weeks had passed after Lauren's death and few updates were provided to the family. The police weren't communicating with them at all or letting them know what was going on, or if they had any updates. They just did not communicate with the family at all. After weeks of begging the police department to consider Lauren's death as an investigation in a crime scene, the police finally did so on December 29th. The police also said that if the family didn't give them their DNA, that they would not continue with the investigation at all.
About if you're going to tell us to leave the apartment, that you're going to do this whole forensic, and at the same time you want to ask the family to give them swabs because we're in the apartment moving, but at the same time, where's the swabs from that night? You know, they want to take our DNA, but they don't want to ask for that person's DNA or anything. And I find that absolutely rude. And they said to us, if we did not give them our DNA, they would not move forward with the investigation.
The family was very upset because why do you need their DNA to continue with the investigation? Of course, they didn't care to provide their DNA, but why are you just asking them and not the last person that was with her, the person of interest? You should be asking him for his DNA as well. Just because you get their DNA doesn't mean that you're going to solve the case. So the family was very upset by this request, but they did provide their DNA. They felt like they were being treated as suspects, and the person that they should be treating as a suspect, the last person that was with Lauren, they didn't ask him for anything, and they just let him go about his life because he was a really nice guy. So around this time is when the family actually found out what happened to Lauren that night, and this was about 2 weeks later after her death. So I'm just gonna backtrack a little bit and tell you what happened. But this story is according to the person that was with her that night. I don't think he's a suspect or even a person of interest right now, but this is according to him. So Lauren had invited a white male whose name was Matthew LaFontaine. He was 37 years old. She had invited him over to her apartment that night. They had met on a Bumble dating app, and they were talking on the app for 3 days. I just want to mention really quick that the police were making it seem like this guy was very older than her. He was her sugar daddy. They say that when they were talking for the 3 days, Lauren had asked him for $40 to get her nails done. And they were just making it seem like he was a much older guy, like a grandpa. And she was just wanting his money. He was just spending it on her and doing whatever. But come to find out, that's not really what happened. Okay, so now I'm not really sure in what correct order these things happen, because according to different sources, they say it in different order. So I'm not for sure exactly what happened. But from what I think happened is they were this is what he said. They were hanging out, eating food, having a good time, taking shots of tequila, playing games. Then Matthew said that they started to watch a movie. While they were watching a movie, Lauren told Matthew that she would have to go outside really quick to get something from her brother because he was dropping something off. Lauren had came back inside of her apartment, then went to the bathroom for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then came back out. I also heard that there were reports that she had gotten ill during the night. I don't know exactly at what point. I don't know if it was before she saw her brother or after she saw her brother, or while they were watching the movie. I'm a little confused on that, but at some point of the night she became ill. After she came out the bathroom, she went back on the couch and they continued to watch the movie. He said Lauren had fell asleep, so he picked her up and carried her to her bedroom, and he laid her down gently, and then he laid down beside her. He said he lay down beside her. They did not have sex that night. He did not take his clothes off at all. He had woke up around 3 a.m. to use the bathroom. He said that she was sleeping beside him, snoring. And then he went back to bed. And then he said he woke up around 6:30 a.m. and Lauren wasn't moving. There was blood coming out of her right nostril, and she wasn't breathing, and he started to freak out. So this is when Matthew decided to call 911. An officer named Carla Romelli met him at the apartment, and she said when she saw him that he was visibly shaken, frantic, and trembling.
Team obtained this police report of the response to a 911 call from Lauren's apartment on the morning of December 12th from a white male identified as Matthew LaFontaine. The investigator notes he was trembling and visibly shaken. LaFontaine said they met on the dating site Bumble, began drinking shots of tequila, and Lauren became ill. That later they played some games, ate some food, and started to watch a movie. He says he carried her to her bedroom and laid her in her bed. He then laid down next to her and fell asleep. He woke up again at approximately 06:30 hours, and she was laying on her right side. Blood was coming out of her right nostril onto the bed, and she was not breathing.
When the officer got there, she said that she saw Lauren on the floor. She was on her back and she did have blood coming out of her nostrils. She said that she was on the floor because Matthew had made a 911 call, and during this call that the dispatcher had told him to perform CPR. Now, this call has not been released, so we don't know if this is the truth, but that's what's being reported. After hearing this version of the story, Lauren's family knew that this did not sound like Lauren at all. They knew that she would not do the things that he was describing. And even her brother said that when he came to Lauren's apartment, he stayed outside. He didn't go inside. He stayed in his car. But when he came to Lauren's apartment, he wasn't dropping anything off to her. He was actually picking up something, which was clothes from her that they had previously bought on a Christmas shopping trip or something like that. So he said that that wasn't true. And also he said when he saw her, she did not seem intoxicated at all. She seemed perfectly fine. She was her upbeat, cheery self. And he said that he knew his sister for 23 years. He would know if something was off, something was going on, and she seemed completely fine. So they do not believe this account of the story. On Lauren's 24th birthday in January, her family, friends, and community planned a march to the mayor's office demanding that something be done by the way they were being treated by the police department. They wanted change, they wanted help, they wanted an investigation, they wanted the police to do their job. The police gave the reason of them not informing the family that Lauren had died because they had already identified her. Why would they need to tell the family that she's dead when they already knew who she was by looking at her passport that was in her apartment and saying, yep, that's Lauren. All done here. The family thought this was absolutely ridiculous. In proper police protocol, you are supposed to let the family know when their loved one is deceased. You don't go and just have the family find out that their daughter, their sister, their loved one is dead by finding out from the landlord that left a note on Lauren's door and they saw this a day later. Make it make sense. The family ended up hiring a lawyer to help them make an impact with the police department and to demand some justice and some help in an investigation. This actually worked, and the mayor, Joseph P. Ganim, made a statement saying that the handling of Lauren's death was being investigated by the Internal Affairs, and that the family was also informed that the detective who had spoken to the family so terribly and treated them like trash was actually off the case, which is amazing because he doesn't deserve to be a police officer. He doesn't know how to handle these type of situations, and he should be gone. He's only suspended. He should actually be fired, but we'll see what's going to happen.
Well, I'm happy to announce that based on the public outcry and based on all the support that we've gotten from people around the country and around the world, just this week, the mayor of Bridgeport has announced that the officers involved in this matter have been placed on administrative suspension. One of the officers also is forced to take early retirement. So Chantel has been calling for these officers to be removed from the streets since this case started. And so we've finally gotten just a little semblance of justice in that regard.
The mayor also stated that death notification should be done in a manner that illustrates dignity for the deceased and respect and compassion for the family. You think? Even though these actions were taken, the family said that they still plan to sue the mayor, the chief, and the police detectives.
Their attorney.
What I believe is that the police failed to collect and preserve that environment from the first day.
The attorney has now filed a notice of claim to sue Bridgeport for negligence, claiming key evidence was not initially submitted to the state lab.
I feel like because he's a white guy and she's a black girl, it's just almost like they just throwing it under the rug.
So after pushing for an autopsy for Lauren, the family found out that Lauren's cause of death was an overdose of fentanyl, promethazine, hydroxyzine, and alcohol. The office ruled her death an accident. So I just want to talk about a little bit what these drugs are really quick. So promethazine is an anti-nausea drug, which causes drowsiness. Hydroxyzine can be used as an anti-anxiety drug, which causes drowsiness. And fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. If you combine all these together with alcohol, it is a lethal deadly cocktail. Basically, it's kind of like a date rape drug. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, but it's like that. And no one's gonna take that and mix it all together on their own.
And I just add to that, when you look at what was found in her body, the experts are saying that these are typical in date rape situations. She had fentanyl in addition to antihistamines. Antihistamines put you to sleep. They make you drowsy.
Right.
So no one who's going on a date with themselves ingests antihistamines because they want to be up and alert. It's a date. But if you're looking for an opportunity on this date to take advantage, then you may introduce antihistamines into the scenario. And we're upset about the fact that they didn't even swab the alcohol to see if there was fentanyl in there. And so now we're playing catch up with this investigation.
Oh.
The medical examiner ruled this as an accident because for it to be ruled as a homicide, they would have to have proof of intent that someone intentionally caused this or gave this to her, and they don't have that right now. So they put an accident, even though I feel like they should have put undetermined, because now that we know the facts of what was not done by the police, they don't know that it was an accident. So I hope that the ruling does change. A day later, after hearing the medical examiner's ruling, the police department finally opened an investigation into Lauren's death. This should have happened as soon as Lauren's body was found, but it wasn't done. Police didn't care about this investigation, and they're only investigating it now because of peer pressure, because of the pressure from the media and the public. A conversation was being made saying this is the missing white woman syndrome. Now, the missing white woman syndrome is when attention is being paid to a white woman that is in harm, but when the same thing happens to a black woman, they're completely ignored. In the beginning, Lauren's case was ignored. There was no attention on it. They weren't trying to help her. They weren't trying to solve it. They were just trying to sweep it under the rug and act like it didn't even happen.
Justice for me, for Lauren, is putting a bill in her name. Justice is making sure that they make this person cooperate the proper way. Justice is making sure that the police department do what they say that they're going to do. Justice for Lauren is also for when they're asking me questions about these police officers, how come they're not doing their jobs?
Right.
They're more interested in other scenarios, but they're not doing their jobs. I want justice for every black woman, every young black girl in this world, to make sure that a woman of color, of any color, that family members going through all this stuff with the police department, that I want a bill to come in her name, that they have to act. They have to act as in within 24 hours, you have to let the family know that their loved one is deceased.
Yes.
And another thing is for them to actually know how to follow the handbook and how you're supposed to treat a family member that have lost a loved one.
Thank God that Lauren has such a strong family, and they are fighting for her justice and making sure that she is not being forgotten.
That night she was silenced, so now we are her voice. Right. But we're here and we're fighting for her.
I just want to put a quick disclaimer here really quick and say that we don't know if Matthew actually had something to do with Lauren's death. It still needs to be investigated, clearly. But he was the last person to be with her that night. And something did go down. Lauren was not a drug user. Lauren lived a healthy life. Lauren just met this guy on Bumble and just wanted to have a nice date, and she ends up dead. So I feel like that there's enough for there to be an investigation. And the fact that Matthew didn't even reach out to the family to give them his condolences, it's a little strange, a little suspicious. And if you didn't have anything to do with it, why are you hiding?
Anyone that genuinely cared and they were there, the last person there, and they know that nothing bad happened, you would at least even reach out to the family yourself. Like, listen, I know I'm sorry for your loss of your daughter or your sister.
Why aren't you comforting the family? Why aren't you answering all the questions they have? Someone died. Why aren't you being supportive? Why aren't you trying to just be there? It seems like you're hiding. I mean, don't come for me, but that's what it seems like to me. We just need to know exactly what happened. What are the details? What went on that night? Let's get the DNA from the glasses they were drinking out of. Let's see if there's alcohol mixed with something else. Let's get the DNA from the used condom that was there. Let's get the DNA from the sheets. Let's find out his background history. Does he have a criminal history of purchasing drugs? Is he a drug user? What's going on with him? What's going on with him? We know what's going on with Lauren. What's going on with him? We need to find out what happened. Let's test everything. Let's find out everything. The family is doing an independent medical exam on Lauren because we don't trust Connecticut, which is rightfully so. Let's just find out all the details of what happened. I want to know the ins, the outs. I want to know where he came from. Did we test his car? Did we look at his phone? Did we search his history? There's so much. Let's just look into everything and find out what happened. Maybe he didn't have anything to do with it. Maybe it did happen the way he said, but we don't exactly know. So let's just wait and investigate and let's see what happens. Okay, that is it for me, guys. This case was a little bit passionate for me and I just can't wait to find out after they investigate some more. But thanks for watching my video and I'll be posting some more, so come back and watch another one. Bye.